See, to understand the pattern of development, we have already seen the pattern of development, lifespan pattern of development. But to understand the pattern of development, we have to follow certain fundamental fact which must be taken into consideration. If we want to understand, if we want to understand the facts about the development, we need to understand certain norms, certain fundamental facts. So there are some facts which has been come up with the intensive research, with the rigorous research by the scientist, by the psychologist. So they have come with some conclusion which we need to follow that. And then we need to understand. They have given some consideration, some considerations for the, you know, development. That is the fact of the development. So that has been clearly explained one by one. So let us see what are those developments, what are those um, facts which the researchers and psychologists have, developed, or rules which they have developed. So let us see one by one. The first one, which talks about early foundation are critical. This is that foundation, early foundation, as the name itself indicates, early, that means as early as possible. So early foundation is very critical. Critical means it is very important. It is very important because early foundation are critical because attitudes, habits, and pattern of behavior established during the early year. So why this early year? Because attitude, because habits, okay, habits, or some patterns, there are different patterns, right? Patterns of behavior, like jumping, running, and all these things. Action, there are different action. These all establish during early years. That means as soon as possible, we need to, focus on this. Okay, society. So once it is developed as early as possible, the individual will adjust very fast, in the community. So that is about the early foundation. That's why they say early foundation is very, very important. Critical means important. So that's why they say early stage is very important. Like KG students, no, they say foundation stage we need to build very strongly. Then second consideration or norms is role, of maturation. Now here, why they say role of maturation and learning in development? See, at this particular norms, in this particular stage, what happens? In this particular stage, maturation and learning plays a significant role. See, these two, maturation and learning, it plays an important role. It plays an important role in the process of development. So this particular two particular factor, one maturation, second learning, plays an important role in the process of development. So that's why it is very, very important. Now see, maturation is unfolding individual inherited traits. That means maturation is inheritant. Maturation is inheritant traits. Learning is the development that occurs from experience, efforts on the individual parts. It is inherited. That means sometime by birth, the child receive, okay, that is a maturation, whatever the skills, okay, these are inherited traits, some sort of genetic factor. Whereas a learning take place with experience, with exposure, exposure, experience and exposure. So in that way, the learning take place. See here, if you say this particular maturation, okay, this maturation provides, it's nothing but what you can say, it is, you can say it is an raw material for the development, raw material or learning. So this act as a raw material, like for example, if you're preparing some tea, so in tea, what are the ingredients? So in that ingredient, sugar, tea powder, these all act as an ingredient for preparation of tea. Likewise, maturation act as a raw material for learning. So this is how the our roles of maturation is important. Okay, so this is all about the role of maturation and learning development. Now let us see the another fact which talks about the development, which is your number third one. That is your development follows a definite and predictable pattern. So development follows a definite and predictable pattern. Now, what is this? Predictable, as the name indicate itself, predictable pattern. That means predicting. That means your prediction tells it follows the predictable and definite. That means definite means it is very clear, and this is assumption. Okay, that is an assumption, predicting whether it will happen like this or like that. So there are orderly pattern of physical. So there are different patterns, orderly patterns. Orderly pattern means which is in the sequence. That means physical. If you talk about physical, these are orderly pattern. Physical, motor, intellectual, and speech development. So these are important orderly patterns of development. So orderly pattern of development works this one, and development is governed by certain law. It means one second. So there are certain laws which we need to follow in the process of development. What is those laws? One is cephalocaudal law. This cephalocaudal law, it means development spread over the body from head to foot. That means if this is a person, okay, if this is a person, then the development take place from head. This is a head to foot. So this is cephalocaudal law. This is foot. So development take place from head to foot. And second law is your proximal distal. Yeah, proximal distal. Proximal.
I have learned in 12th class.
Very good. So this development spread towards central axis of the body to extremities. That means, for example, if there is a a child or person, so the development spreads towards from central axis. Now, what is the central axis? Let us say this is a central axis. This is a head, this is a foot. This is a central axis of the body to extremities. So sometime what happens, the development may take place from the central point towards head or from towards a toe. So it starts from the center where it's here, it starts from the head to foot. Okay, so that is a predictable pattern. Now, for example, as you can see, why I'm saying this development follows the definite and predictable pattern, because it is an orderly, arranged, physical, motor, intellectual speech. This child must have all these processings very clearly. So, physical, motor, intellect, speech has to be developed. So, how it will develop? There are two laws. One is cephalocaudal law, which develops from the head to foot, like first, and one is from proximal, that is from central. In some people, you can see first they will develop the motor, then they will develop the speech, and then they will develop the physical. So in some cases, the child will develop physical, then motor skills, then intellect, and then speech comes. So it is like that. So that is why they said it is definite and predictable patterns. So that is a fact again of development. Then when we move further, we have number fourth one. Number fourth one is your, you know, all individual are different. All individual. They say all individual are different. Why they say all individual are different? It is very clear. See, no two individual. If you see, no two individuals are same. No two individual are same. One individual may react in some way and another individual may react in some another way. So it is very clear and very known. One can never predict with accuracy how people will react in the situation. Let us say this individual is reacting differently in some situation, and one more individual is reacting differently in some situation. So I cannot predict how he will react, because they both are different. So that's why it is called all individual are different. This is also one fact. Then number fifth one is like each phase, that means each phase of development has characteristic behavior, as characteristic. Now what is this characteristic behavior? What is this characteristic behavior? See, each phase has certain behavior. Let us say phase of first year, phase of second year, phase of third year. Okay, so these are years. So each phase has different characteristics. Each phase has different characteristics. Okay, so each phase has a different characteristics. The pattern are marked by the period of equilibrium, when individual adapt easily to environment demands. See, if the child don't have different characteristics means the child must know how to talk, the child must know how to indulge the people, the child must know how to solve the problem things, or he must know how to adapt, he must know the values. So if the child don't develop at particular phase, it will be difficult to survive. It will be very difficult to survive in the community. So that's why it says each phase of development has a characteristic behavior where they have to adjust. How they will adjust when this phase have developed correctly, because when they adjust properly, the child becomes equilibrium. That means the child is performing normally. So that's why it is equilibrium. So that's why it is very important to understand. The child must develop the different characteristics at different phases. This phase requires survival skills at community. This phase also requires survival skills at the community. This phase also requires survival at the community. So that's why they must develop the different characteristics, good characteristics, bad characteristics, like how to perform in the group, what is the social adjustment, what is the emotional adjustment. So all these things they have to develop. Okay, each phase will have different adjustment in the community. So that is your each phase of
That's
development.
the third one you have written some equalizing. What is
Yeah,
that?
it's not third one. It's all. It is adjustment of equilibrium. Equilibrium. That means equal. Equal. That means the child must be equal in handling, in adjusting in the society. That means in the social adjustment, the child must, that means equally balance. If the child has the delayed in these phases, okay, that means the child may not able to show the equilibrium. That means the child may be very difficult in adjusting the society, in the society. Okay.
And it covers all three phases.
Yeah. Not only three phases, there are different. This is a phase. Phase means period. Okay, like prenatal, natal phases, prenatal phases, that even you can say phase of adjustment, phase of understanding, phase of all. These are the phases. Lifespan development, you remember stages of development. These are all phases. Okay, then next one.
For this adjustment and equilibrium comes under third phase.
It's not about the third phase. It's all about the phase. Even in the fourth phase, like let us say adolescent, let us say adulthood is the fifth phase. So the child has to develop the equilibrium of at all the phases. Okay. The next one is your sixth one is each phase has hazards. Each phase has hazards. Now, what is hazardous? See, each period is associated with certain development, like which we have discussed. Like, for example, here also, if I say first phase, here also, if I say first phase, second phase, third phase. Okay, so each phase has a certain development. At first phase, like a childhood, there is some development process take place. Here also some development process take place. Here also some development process take place. So each development process had a certain development, let us say physical, psychological, environmental. So this phase, maybe 4 or 5 phase also. So each phase will have a development in physical, psychological, environmental. So each phase, even if I take fourth phase, there also will be a physical, psychological, and environmental development. So this hazardous inevitably involves adjustment problem. Hazardous means some sort of what do you say, danger kind of things, where
Hazard.
hazard meaning is what do you say, some sort of
We,
sign, danger, risk.
yes,
Yeah, that is
we
hazardous.
see now in day-to-day life the
Yeah, these
sign
are, yes, so these are all
hazard.
hazardous. So this hazardous involves the adjustment problem. For example, we should be aware of this hazardous. We should be aware of this hazardous, physical, psychological, environmental hazardous, because awareness of this make it possible to prevent, at least at least at some level. If we understand the hazardous, that means some danger. If we understand the danger of development, for example, now here let us say the child born with some physical difficulties or psychological difficulties, or some environmental is not able to adjust, he has psychological, let's say cognitive limitation, physical, he has a motor problem. Okay, so these are the dangers which we have identified earlier, or as soon as possible we have identified. So once we identify these hazards, we must work on this. If we work, we can prevent some conditions. Okay, this might be by birth, but sometime, when the child is in mother's womb, the mother has to must be aware of all the hazardous thing. If I take this, what will be the problem to my baby? So these all things the child must, the parents must take care to prevent at least some of this. So that's why each phase also has a danger. Each phase also has some hazardous effect. So that's why it is said each
Yes,
phase has a as.
this develop in first phase.
Seventh one is development is aided by stimulation. Now development development is aided by stimulation. Now stimulation, what is this? See, while most of the development occurs at the result of maturation, which we have discussed. So when the maturation is inherent, it is a result in the development. That means we have seen by birth, if the child has good IQ, then he will have some good development process. Much can be done to aid development so that it will reach to its potential. But sometimes what happens, most of the development occurs as the result of maturation and environmental experiences. So maturation and environmental experience will result in the development. Okay, though much can be done to aid development. See, by birth, if the child is born with physical condition, and whatever he experience in the environmental, that will be the development. But apart from this, there should be some aided development which can reach to the full potential, but still the child is not
Yes,
reaching to the full. potential. That means the child's ability is not reached 100%. So what we have to do? We have to provide some aid, some technology. Yes, some sort of support, stimulating. For example, if you have a pin, if you poke yourself, you will get a pain. That means it, when you poke,
Reaction.
yeah, that means stimulating something to do. Hmm. When someone argues with you, when you get angry, you beat. So beat is a like your objective. So it happens, right? So likewise, development. We're talking about the development. Development means, the child must be good in understanding, the child must be good in physical, the child must be good in understanding or social skill, lot of things. So that some people will be, developing this by birth. That means maturation and environmental will give you better good development. But still what happens, the child may not able to reach the full potential. Even he has a good maturation, even the child has born with the good IQ, and even if he is in a good place, interacted in a good place, good environment, but still the child may not be succeeded in reaching the full potential 100%. So for that to reach, make the child to reach 100%, we have to provide some sort of aid. Aid means support, some sort of support, stimulation. This is called a stimulation. Stimulation especially effective at the time when ability is normally developing, though it is important in all the time. For example, in certain cases, if you see intellectual disability, they may not able to develop the full potential to do the work. So what we do, we give some sort of aid, like in the adaptation in the hand, adaptation in the wheelchair. So this is all stimulation so that they can reach to the full potential. Okay, so that is the development aided by stimulation. So this is how it works. Okay.
But sir,
Mm. What do you say, development, they say that the development, one second, they say that development is affected by cultural change. Now see here, now what they are saying, in the next one, it the development, the development is affected. Now what is development, you know already. So it is also affected by cultural changes. That means if child is in good culture, he will develop good behavior. If the child is not in good culture, he may not develop the good behavior. Development is attitude, culture, attitude, values, physical growth, all these things are things. Okay. Individual development, child development is molded. You can mold, that means you can mold in any ways if the child is in good environment. That means mold to confirm cultural standard and norms. For example, if this child is from different culture, if he molded, okay, if you mold, the child will develop the standards and norms of particular culture. So this is how the child will develop the culture. While changing in this standard affects the development. That means if this child is involved, if you have molded this child to follow the standard and the norms of particular culture, if you change this, there will be an effect in development. Okay, so there will be an effect in development. You should not change, you should follow the same culture where he is. If you suddenly change, there will be change in the development process. Whereas in the next one, they say social expectation with every stage of development. That means social expectation with every stage of development. Okay, now what they say
Sir,
here, yes, patient with every stage of development. So every stage has a certain societal expectation. See, as I say, childhood stage, middle stage, old stage has some social expectation. At each at each stage, individual will have a societal or social expectation. Okay, expectation. So at the individual will be successful in fulfilling those expectations only if he or she is adhering the rules and regulation. So rules and regulation. So if he knows the rules and regulation of that particular social norms, then only, or if he knows the rules and regulation of the family or society, then only he will be fulfilling. That means then only that expectation can be fulfilled. So at each stage the child must understand the norms, that is rules and regulation of family and society, then only that things will be successfully expected. Okay, then only it will be
in
fully expect, then only
in
he will.
each
Yeah, in each stage. That means at every stage, the child need to understand the rules and regulation, norms and regulation. Okay, so that is about social expectation in every stage of development. Then, at last, we have um, one more one more facts. Traditional belief. Traditional traditional belief traditional belief about traditional belief about people of all ages. Now, what is this traditional belief? See, traditional belief about physical and psychological characters affects the judgment of others as well as their self-evaluation. So, if the olden people, olden people, um, they believe their belief is different about their belief is different about the physical, about psychological characteristics. The child has different societal characteristics. So that will be there with the things. Okay, just hold on once. Yeah, so old people, they believe that physical psychological characteristics have a, they judge this physical and psychological differently. They judge this very differently. Okay, they judge very differently. So that differently judgment will affect the development, will affect the development or self evaluation. Okay, so that is it. So long as this belief persists, they will have a profound influence on the development pattern. So these all will affect on the development pattern. So if I believe that if they think in different way, they will have a different development pattern. It all depends upon our perception, upon our thinking. Okay.
this
Let us say, for example, if the child is having some handicapping condition, so they judge, they judge differently. They will not see positive, they will judge negatively. So that negative impact will affect the child's development. So this is how child's development will grow.
So they will not only judge physical but psychological characteristics also. So their judgment now in present generation, if you see, they say even they are also a part of our society, they are also part of our society. So that means it is a positive impact. So this positive impact will show a better development in this child. So that is the concept.